All right, guys, I have an amazing guest today. I want to welcome my very, very special guest, Claire Chandler. Claire joins us today to speak about broader access to prospective clients. Because let's be honest, no matter what level of business you're in, what size of business, we all have growing pains. And of course, we're going to talk about some other incredible and kind of good things. So please welcome my amazing guest, Claire Chandler. Welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Susan. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. And we were just talking before we went live, and oh my gosh, we have some really fun things to talk about.
This could
Um,
go in so many directions, right? So strap in, guests. This is going to be fun.
yes, yes, absolutely. Claire's from the East, and I'm from the Midwest. So
There you go.
we are bringing some amazing charm and personality to this episode today. So whether you're listening or you're watching or you're doing both, I mean, I think it's going to be great. So, all right. So, Claire, let's start off by, what's your origin story?
Oh my gosh, what a broad question to start. So, where do I begin, right? So, I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised. Um, People, doubt that because I don't have an accent, your stereotypical accent, but whatever. So, born and raised in New Jersey, and after I finished college, I went to college up in Connecticut. It's the only time I lived outside of the state. And I swore upon graduation I was never going to work in corporate America. It was just not for me. I'm the product of a business owner. My dad was a sole proprietor. My mom was a school teacher. And so corporate was just not in my DNA. But lo and behold, upon graduation, that's where the opportunities were, right? So I spent close to 20 years in corporate roles, everything from I was an editor of environmental impact statements for the first couple of years. It's more exciting than it sounds. It was actually, I learned a lot in that job. And then, I went into more of a broader communications role. I spent some time in customer relations, and then I spent several years in human resources, and found that the soup to nuts human resources was really not lighting my fire. But what did was the talent management, the leadership development, the executive coaching, the having conversations with individual employees one on one, to just ask them what they want to be when they grow up. And it doesn't matter if they are a frontline worker or the CEO, they all light up when you draw that out of them, right? And then you help them build the path to get there. And so that was absolutely my passion. And as I advanced in the company, I was on an executive track. I realized that that was just not the path for me. And so that voice that had told me all along that I was not really a corporate type personality, and personality and corporate don't really go together, right? So I had this sort of quirky, goofy personality. I was told, you got to tone down your walk. Your walk is too happy, like stuff like that, right? So 10 years ago, 2011, I decided, okay, you know what? I'm going to break out of this sort of secure bubble and go take my shot. And so I left corporate. I didn't really have a plan. I didn't have a roster of clients. I didn't have a company name at that point. It was just me, my energy. And I said, I am destined to do more with the gifts God gave me than just fitting them into a corporate box. And so I spent about 2 years kind of dabbling a little bit, as a consultant, as a loosely crafted consultant, taking different jobs and different clients. And then 2 years later in 2013, by then I had really sort of narrowed in on this is what my business is going to be about. This is what I'm going to offer the world, so to speak. And that's when I formed my company Talent Boost, and it's been going strong ever since.
So what is your company? What do you do?
So the tagline of Talent Boost is talent isn't born, it's boosted. And that comes from this deep seated belief that I have that everybody has it within them to be amazing, right? To be an amazing leader, to be an amazing performer, to build an amazing career. You don't have to settle for mediocrity. You don't have to be one of these people who says, well, work is work and you're not supposed to enjoy your job. Forget all that. Like, that's not true, right? And so many people believe that. So my company, my business, my focus is really from the top down. So I try to work with the highest levels of leadership in a company that I can, because I have come to understand that the biggest impact on a company's culture, and therefore on the attitude and the joy of the people in it is the behavior of the leaders, right? And so I go into a company, small, medium, and large, and work with the top level leaders to really help them better embrace who they naturally are, what they're all about, and how they can lead in more authentic ways. And that's going to be what turns on the profitability faucet, if you will, because it's picture cliche, right? You get more flies with honey than with vinegar, et cetera. But
Yes.
real authentic leaders who are very self-aware, who are genuine to who they are, who have a compelling mission and know how to connect people, in their individual passions to delivering on that promise, that's where you're going to build an amazing company, an amazing business.
So would people starting to look to hire people, so if they're looking to grow their company,
Mm,
say they're going from solopreneur to now we're going to start hiring a team, would you be a great fit for them as well?
absolutely. One of the main reasons for that is to sort of dispel the myth that most hiring managers have, that you have to go out and hire the best possible candidate. And that's a myth. And let me tell you why. The difference is, and what you really need to do, especially as a solopreneur, and I've helped a lot of entrepreneurial startup companies hire their very first employee. It's really important to find the right candidate, not the best candidate, right? And so, the very first CEO of a company, he was asked to start up a North American subsidiary of this big European company. He called me up and he said, Claire, will you help me build this team? I said, absolutely. He said, okay, I need you to go out and find me a rock star for this first employee. And I said, I'm going to do you one better. I'm going to find you the right person, not the best person. And there's a difference, right? Because if you hire an individual rock star, and pick your sports analogy, right? Any team sport, and leadership is a team sport, business is a team sport. If you fill your roster with a bunch of individual superstars, you'll notice that those teams very seldom, if ever, win the championship, and they certainly don't build a dynasty.
Correct.
It's the ones who know how to put together the right combination of people who gel, who can blend their individual talents and perspectives and all of that to helping advance your mission. And in sports, the mission is the World Series, it's the Super Bowl, it's the Masters Championship or whatever. I realize that's an individual sport, but still, right? It's all about finding the right candidate, the right skills to mesh with your mission, to mesh with your chemistry, and whose individual passions and talents and temperament and personality are best going to advance the mission. So it's best match of the right candidate, not the individual rock star.
Yeah, that's so good. And I receive applications all the time, like or hey, there's a new job available, or there's this whatever, just from all in the space that we're in. And this gal, she's pretty big. Her I just received, her different emails and to her email list. And it was amazing because she said, you know what? Do not send me your resume. Do not send me your resume. I do not want to see resumes. And these are the reasons why. And so she has a team, obviously, but she's looking for another person to fill a void that she's
Mm,
missing. And so the reason why she doesn't want a resume is because just like what you just said,
yeah.
she doesn't care about your accolades and all that. She wants somebody that has that drive, that has that passion, that wants to learn, that wants to mesh with the team that she already has. So I guess my question to you is, do you agree with that? Should businesses, small, big, medium, large, whatever, ask for resumes, or should we start ditching the whole resume?
That's such a controversial question, right? So conceptually, I agree with that 100%. And I love that this woman recognizes the fact that she wants to fill a void, not a vacancy, right? And there's a difference. She has a team, she's got a culture, she's got an environment that clearly she's very happy with. She likes how the team is put together. And so it's important that she does not just find a person to plug in to fulfill, these bullets on a job description, right? Really, really important. Um, it, it's an interesting proposition, right? To suggest that we want to do away with resumes entirely. I think the bigger companies are going to to have to sort of deal with, I don't know why my video is flipping out. Is it flipping out for you as well?
Yes, you're flipping out, but
Okay, I'm not sure why.
I'm okay with it. I
All
mean,
right, we're gonna play through because it seems like I'm just a hologram now. I don't know why it's doing
yeah,
that.
we can hear you fine. It's just the
Yeah,
video. A lot of times, sometimes when we have the background, sometimes backgrounds play a huge part of
yeah.
it. Um,
Let me I don't know if you're gonna edit this, but
all right. So for everybody that's actually watching us, Claire and I had a little bit of a snafu with technology. You gotta love it. So we're going to restart. And I'm going to re-ask the question again. And the question before we had the snafu was, should companies, small, medium, or large, ask for resumes or should we ditch the resumes?
great question, and thank you for your indulgence with the technology whatever we had there. Anyway, so first of all, I think kudos to this female leader that you referenced, who recognized the fact that she wants to fill a void and not a vacancy, right? I think too many companies of all sizes, and especially larger ones, get into this reflexive mode where they backfill for a specific position and they say, okay, these are the bullets on the job description. Go out and find me, again, the best candidate to complete these bulleted responsibilities. Um, and that is very short-sighted. So, the fact that she's got this sort of mindset where she says, I've got this culture, I've got this team, I've got this chemistry and this environment going on that's very positive, that is, achieving a lot, but I have this additional slot that I need to fill. I can either fill it with the best skills that align with the bullets in the job description, ergo, I'm going to review a bunch of resumes, or I'm going to put a call out to the individual with whom my message, my mission, my team best resonate, right? And for that particular leader, resumes are not the way to go.
Correct.
It is a really controversial thing, and I applaud it because I'm all about, mixing the pot, stirring it up a little bit, and not just saying, well, we've always done it this way by collecting resumes and sifting through them and then picking from there who looks great on paper and then having conversations. So it's a really interesting idea, and I applaud it, and I agree with it conceptually 100%. Some companies are going to hear that and go, there is no possible way we can ditch the resume. How would we do this any differently? And so for those who are at least mildly curious, um, it's an interesting challenge, right? But we live in an age where technology, when it's not freaking out like it just did a few minutes ago, puts us in touch with, first of all, a much broader audience in a much more dynamic way. So now we can do video interviews. We don't have to wait for, the COVID monster to go away so we can meet people in person. We can meet people where they are. We can better understand them. And we as leaders can get our message out there in a much more personal and interactive way than even your traditional corporate website and mission statement could ever accomplish. So it's an interesting proposition. I think the majority of companies, at least sitting here today, are not going to be able to switch tomorrow to a mindset of we're going to get rid of the resumes entirely. But I would challenge even those more traditional companies to look at their resumes through a different lens, right? Look at it as, okay, that's one piece of the pie, but have the conversations and have your conversations slash interviews in a different way. Make use of things like the right assessment tools that will help you kind of filter through what the resume does not tell you about the person behind the page.
Right. And I think that's a good point, Claire, because I remember when I had my businesses, but then I got a divorce. And then I was like, okay, maybe I need to go get a job because I don't know if I can continue with my own businesses. And so when you do a traditional resume and you're applying to all these amazing companies, the problem is that they can't ask you your age, but they ask you when you graduated from college.
Right.
Or they ask you like the years in which you were employed. Well, any company can start subtracting and adding. And
Right.
so I think that's why I like the idea. And I like the idea of this lady, how for her company she's ditching the resume is because she's not asking for what your experience is. She's not asking when you graduated college or if you've even graduated college. She's not asking all that. And I just remember, applying for all these different positions because I didn't know what I was going to do. And some of them said, well, you're just overqualified, or we're kind of looking for someone right out of college. I'm like, well, that's
Yeah.
kind of, the ball. And so I like the idea of not asking for that resume.
Yeah, and it's interesting, the larger companies have set themselves up so that the resume is an absolute essential first step, right? Because they have introduced technology and integrated that into their hiring process to act as that first filter.
Yes.
And so you've got applicant tracking systems, you've got, ways that a computer or some other, artificial intelligence will read the resume first and only put in front of you candidates that they feel at least meet the minimum qualifications. And the bigger the company, the more there is a focus on that, right? But when you're a small company, culture is everything. Now, culture is everything for a large company as well. But when you're a small company, there's what I call the ripple effect, right? The ripple effect of every decision you make, every person you hire, and every day-to-day choice in how you lead and in what direction you go. The ripple effect in a small company is far greater than in a bigger one, right? A large company can absorb a bad hire, a decision that wasn't well thought through. A small company lives or dies on the ability and the commitment of its people. And if you can't hire the right people to fill those voids versus just treating it as a vacancy with a plug and play kind of mentality,
Right.
you're setting yourself up to fail.
Yes. And I think there's a lot of companies too that right now, I mean, if they are ditching the resume, which, I do a lot of research. I told you this early on. So I research all my guests and stuff. So I get a lot of background information, not only about you, but about like the process and what happens. And so we'll move on from this in just a second, but like the new norm is what I found is that if they do ditch the resume, they're asking for a quick 30-second to 3-minute video right off the bat, just so that
Yeah.
they can meet you and why you would be a good fit for the company. So what's your take on that? I mean, are you happy for that, or is that like a not so good?
It's interesting because all the research is kind of pointing to video interviews and video resumes, right? As the to your point, as the new normal or as the new standard. Most companies are using that as an addition to the portfolio of, the sort of three-dimensional qualifications of me as a candidate. Um, it's really interesting. It becomes a question of bandwidth, right? And so the bigger the company, the more people they have dedicated to recruiting, which is great because they can act as a first filter. But recruiters, in my experience, are seldom deeply plugged into specifically what that hiring manager or that leader or that business overall really needs in the candidate. Recruiters as a species are trained and conditioned and hired in advance based on their ability to filter out the noise and get down to those candidates who on paper and through a very quick phone screen match up to the bullets on a job description. So until we change the way that we um, hire and train and deliver expectations to a recruiter,
Mhm.
we are necessarily going to have to keep doing that sort of filtering and funneling. But the video from a candidate perspective, most candidates are very scared and intimidated by that, right? But here's the thing. Eventually, you're going to have some level of face-to-face interview. And I don't know about you, but I find it a little bit more intimidating to go, imagine if this were an interview for a job or for me for some, big contract with a client. I would rather go in being able to shape the narrative a little bit in my terms, right? And we've all talked about, training, interview training for years and years and years has talked about at some point, you've got to have a 30-second elevator pitch ready, either as the first thing that you say or the last thing that you say as a candidate. How amazing would it be to script that, to practice that in the mirror or however you want to do it, and then get it to a video pitch that you feel comfortable with, that you can put out there to the world and express yourself as a candidate. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to your really great question of, should we think away from the video? I think video is the reality and video is the way of the future. And we all know through this, this last year's pivot toward more remote work, toward more remote communication, we have all had to get more comfortable with expressing ourselves and showing up through a video format. So why not embrace that as a candidate and build your personal brand through video?
Yeah, absolutely. So Claire, how do you define success?
For me personally,
Yeah, how do you define success?
for me, success is the ability to, and I'll kind of boil it down to two words, right? Freedom and flexibility, right? But the ability to, before we went live, I was saying to you, the weather here in New Jersey yesterday was phenomenal. And I had the good fortune to have scheduled a golf date with my father, right? Um, I'm in a place where when I was still in a corporate job, that would have been far more difficult for me to take a Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? So for our younger audience, go Google that because that movie will just change your
That's
life.
a
But
great movie. You got to watch it.
it's a phenomenal movie. And I still think of that when the sky is, cloudless blue, it's like, it's totally a Ferris
Yes.
Bueller day. But, when I was in corporate, I had to allocate, how many of my vacation days I had accessible that I could do these one-offs and just drop everything and do that. I'm a business owner now. And, if I don't work, I don't get paid. I know that. However, I've gotten to a point where my business doesn't run on its own without me, certainly, but I've got the freedom and flexibility to determine who I get to work with, what we get to do together, and when that work takes place. And so I'm in a much better place now to schedule my business so that it supports the things that are most important to me. And to me, my top two values are family and health. And so everything else, business wise, even the food I eat, the meals I plan for myself and my husband, all of that are kind of dictated in terms of how they support my family and my health. So
Yeah,
that to me is success.
no, absolutely. And so, you talked about golf. And so, doing my research, I found this really cool thing on your site, this book that you wrote, which is called Chicks with Sticks: How to Handle Your Business on the Golf Course. I am
Yes,
so fascinated by that. Can you talk about that, Claire?
I would love to. So thank you for doing your research and finding that book. I just launched that like a month and a half ago. And so I mentioned, yesterday I got to golf with my dad, and I've been golfing for years and years now. And in the beginning it was just sort of a means, yes, to have exercise. I am not one of these people who hits the treadmill. I look at people in total awe. I have a friend who runs every morning, and one morning she complained she wasn't feeling well, so she only ran 3 miles instead of her normal 6. I'm like, I don't even know who you are. Like that doesn't add up for me. Anyway, so golf is like my primary source of exercise. But as I've, kind of advanced in my career, and certainly now as a business owner, I've come to appreciate that literally every round of golf I've ever played has had some sort of value in my business life. And don't hear that to mean, oh, I happen to golf with somebody who then signed a contract with me by the end of the 18
Right,
holes. That's not what I mean.
right.
But just knowing how to play, even if you play badly, the mere act of showing up on the golf course gives you so much value as a business owner and a business leader for many reasons. One of which is that's where the men play, right? So now I'm talking to all of us women out there, right? Because we're the ones who have this hang up about golfing. We're the ones who say, if I spend 5 hours, a full day, whatever, going around and knocking a ball around with a stick that I'm not even good at and not terribly interested in, I'm taking my eye off of business. And I would challenge you to flip that, because the men understand what clearly you don't, right? Which is business decisions are made, relationships are formed on the golf course. And even if you don't leave those 18 holes with a new business card in your hand or a new freshly minted contract, the time you take away from the day-to-day firefighting of running your business or leading a team or staffing it or whatever gives you such perspective, right? There's such value in the vitamin D, the fresh air, the physical exercise that frees you up from all that time you spend in your head worrying and wondering if you are doing the right thing by your business and by your team. So there's so many pluses to business women in particular building up at least a modicum of familiarity with golf, because it's going to pay dividends to you that you can't even imagine. So that's why I wrote the book.
No, that's like I'm sitting here listening to you thinking, oh my gosh, I never looked at it like that.
Yeah.
And
And
you were
most women don't.
No, and you're absolutely correct. And then I was thinking, oh my gosh, that's why, when I was married, my ex-husband, he loved, he played golf, but he loved playing basketball. So he would go do pickup games and make
Yeah,
connections that way.
that's right.
And around here in the Midwest right now, it's soccer. Like soccer is huge. So
Yeah.
people go and play pickup games in soccer. So I bet, Claire, I mean, you could probably share this, but wouldn't it transform into those as well? Like just going anywhere, whether it's a soccer field, whether it's a basketball court, on the golf course. I mean, it probably all applies.
It all applies 100%, even if it's your kids playing soccer. All you parents who are sort of trapped like hostages on the sideline, right? You've got your coffee. The weather is never ideal. Like you soccer moms and dads out there, like maybe 3% of the time do you get to go and watch your kid play soccer on a pristine weather day, right? The rest of the time it's cold, it's raining, it's too hot, there's bugs, et cetera. You're not the only parent on the sidelines in that instance who's going through that. That already is a shared experience. We are in a relationship economy, right? That's how you build a business. That's how you staff it with people that gel with you, not that all look and think and act and talk like you, but who mesh with you and challenge you to think in different ways. And that's how businesses are built and strengthened and grown, are through relationships, one conversation at a time. So golf is an example of that, because it's sort of the stereotypical sport that the big, Fortune 100 businessmen go out and play, right? And the doctors, there's a reason doctors take one day off a week for golf. They see the physical benefits of that. They also understand the mental benefits of that.
Yes.
And they see the business benefits of that, because at the end of the day, all doctors are also business people. And it's the, you just said it. You said, I had never thought of it in that way before. Any sport, any opportunity that brings people together in a shared experience, especially if it's a physically exerting one, is a great opportunity to get to know people on a personal level. And as we all know, that's the key to then deepening a business relationship, is to understand who people are as humans first.
Yes, absolutely. So, wow, I'm just in awe of that because I'm still thinking back, like, oh my gosh, all these missed opportunities when
Yeah.
we kind of flip the script and look at it from a different perspective. That we're like, yeah, absolutely. So I would highly recommend Chicks with Sticks, and give that a great like in-depth like review and read it and everything. So, Claire, moving on, we're gonna talk about your other books and everything, but I'm curious, what has been your greatest flaw that has become your greatest asset?
Oh, it's awesome. Okay. So, and it's really easy. And I mentioned this before we started to record. When I spent my close to 20 years in corporate, um, I was periodically pulled aside and told that I was a little bit too goofy for the boardroom. So dial back the goofy, because we're about to go in and meet with the board or meet with the executive team, or my walk was too happy. And you're really going to scale that back. And so in the corporate box, goofiness, i.e., individual personality,
Mhm.
is seen as a flaw. Now, let me clarify that. It never held me back. I was very successful in corporate. I was advanced. I was, being groomed to be an executive
Mhm.
vice president and all this. And that was all wonderful. The epiphany that I had was, the goofiness is what lights me up. The goofiness is what allures people and attracts people into my orbit, the right people, right?
Mhm.
And so what was seen as this non-corporate, Claire, you really got to dial this back because it's going to detract from your, all the great things that you offer,
Right.
have now been seen and appreciated as an asset. And let me tell you something, most of my clients are in corporate America, right? And so they realize that when I'm sitting with them in a room and they've come to me and they've said, we have bureaucratized ourselves into a corner that we can't see our way out of,
Mhm.
they lean in when I start to talk to them in non-corporate and sometimes goofy ways, because they realize that this is the personality that they need to pull them through the fog, right? So that goofy factor that doesn't sit well maybe in the boardroom, on the other side of the table as their advisor,
Yes.
they glom onto you because they're like, Claire is not your standard three-piece suit walking around with a clipboard and a template of, leadership in a box.
Right.
She gets us on a more human level, and we want to spend time with her.
Mm.
And so that, to your question, I love that question. What was seen as a flaw in corporate is now seen as the key to unlocking the box that they've trapped themselves in.
Yeah, I love that because I can relate to you. I was told years ago, I mean, I was from corporate, I was in the hospital sector, and,
Mm,
I always was happy and did things differently. But then I moved into my business and I had a millionaire, who's very successful tell me, we were on a call and he told me that my laugh was very, how did he call it? Was a very nervous, unsettling, untrustworthy laugh.
oh my gosh.
Like
Okay.
it's just me. It's just my giggle. It's not that I'm
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And in that moment, I had to take a second and I said, honestly, what it is I don't think I mesh with you. I don't think I like you, and I don't really want to tell you what I really think of you. So
Yep.
I'm kind of giggling because you're not being very nice in any way. So I agree with you because I think sometimes people look at it from a different aspect, and then through the years, like it's kind of flipped, and he's like, okay, I kind of appreciate it. So
Yeah.
we're different, and it's okay to be different. And I think sometimes that's a great thing to have in whatever our little quirks or our little nuances some people might think or whatever it is. I think it's what makes us individuals, and I think what makes us successful. I mean, you've been very successful being different and being
And being goofy, right?
yeah.
Well, and here's the thing, like that's the transformation that successful people get to, right?
Mhm.
Which is this understanding whether you are a corporate executive, you're a solopreneur, or you're somewhere else on the spectrum of business ownership and leadership. The moment that you embrace your authentic self,
Yes.
and I know that's a phrase that's overused and sometimes misused, but I truly believe the more you understand and embrace, and the day that you get to that point where you say, goofy is part of my DNA,
Right.
being sarcastic is who I am. And it doesn't detract from anything. What it does is attracts the right people into your orbit and repels the wrong people away. So that millionaire you spoke of at the time
Mhm.
was not one of your people.
No.
And so your natural style, which you unleashed and let out to play, repelled him at first. But interesting that he came around because he understood that that was you being genuine. That was you being authentic, right? If you just want a cardboard cutout, who just does and says whatever is predictable,
Right.
well, that's not us. So look elsewhere. And I guarantee you're not going to get the results from them that you would get from us.
Right. Absolutely. So Claire, when you go into um, you know, your clients, small, medium, large business or whatever, do you ever um bring that up, meaning how to change your style, like you just said, like are you able to identify maybe something that they're not quite using, they're not quite being authentic about, to try to help them grow a better business or better team or hire different people? I mean, do you ever bring that into them?
I always bring that in. In fact, that is the very first step that I take with just about every client that I've ever worked with. And so there's this piece, I keep talking about this authenticity
Mm.
concept, which is so important, right? Because every leader I've ever worked with, when I talk to them about this whole, talent isn't born, it's boosted, you have it within you to be this amazing leader. Most of them go, yeah, but you know what? That's not me. Like, I'm not charismatic and I'm not inspirational and I'm not this and I'm not that. And it's like, here's the thing. The most successful leaders don't worry about whether they're charismatic or inspirational or they're extroverted versus introverted.
Right.
They're genuine to who they are.
Mhm.
And so the very first thing that I do is help them become really, really self-aware
Mm.
of what it is that they are naturally good at, what their natural style truly is, what drives them from within, right? And we get to a place where they become so crystal clear about what makes them tick, how they show up, what comes naturally to them, and why all of that is. I just hit my microphone because why not? Once they get really, really clear about that, it opens up all these great conversations, and they go, So that's why last week when I spent a whole day doing this, this, and this, I was physically and mentally drained at the end of the day. But yesterday when I got to do this, this, and this, I looked up and the next time I looked out the window, the sun had set because I was in such a zone. And that's the key, right? Is to get the leaders from the top down and then everybody underneath them into that place where they are in the zone, which is unique and individual for every single person as possible. The more you can spend truly, doing the things that come naturally to you, doing the things that light your internal fire, and doing things in a way that meshes with other people because they're bringing their best selves to work and all of that sort of thing. That's how you build an amazing company that as a byproduct becomes enormously profitable and can scale and grow exponentially.
Wow, absolutely. To getting to the true authentic self, and I say authentic in quotes because it can be a buzzword for some people,
Yeah.
but truly getting to what they are and who they are so they can lead their team successfully and continue to profit. Does that sometimes take multiple times working with you, like meaning multiple sessions? Because I'm sure when you first go into a session, I mean, people put those walls up, put those blocks up and says, yeah, good luck with this, Claire. You're not going to hit me. You're not going to get
Right.
it. This is who I am.
Yep.
You're like, yeah, we're going to work on it. I mean, does it take a while sometimes?
Sometimes it does, but I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Just about every leader I've ever worked with, at some point in our one-on-one discussions, if they don't full out cry, they at least get emotional. And
Wow.
it's not because I'm a therapist by any stretch of the imagination, but I do have this way through our conversations to get them to a place and to create a space for them where they can be vulnerable, right? Where they can embrace the fact that it's not about that they're imperfect or they're flawed,
Mhm.
but they have to recognize that their people already know that, right? So bring those walls down, because if you are showing up and trying to pretend, like every leader I know that I first work with says, I can't admit to my team that I don't have the answer to something, that I don't know something. And it's like, sure you can, because first of all, that's the reason you have a team to begin with, because you're not supposed to know everything and you're not supposed to do everything. And here's another little secret. They already know that you're flawed. They already know you don't have all the answers, right? And so, what is the biggest driver of engagement? Employees want to feel appreciated and they want to feel in on things. And the sooner a leader understands that and says, okay, I'm going to tap into the team that I have intentionally placed around me because they complement what I don't have as a strength, then we're off to the races. But to answer your question first, so I have this hack that I use. I mentioned the word assessment before.
Mhm.
I have this suite of assessment tools that I use as a very first sort of pre-work to that conversation to bring their walls down. And it's really powerful. And here's why. So I was working with a company a couple of months ago, and they said, we want you to come in and do some 360-degree feedback with all of the leaders, because there's some mismatches here, there's some bad behavior, and we want them to understand how other people see them. I said,
Claire, I'm going to pause you really quick.
Yep. So I have this hack that I have integrated into my work, because you had asked the question about, what about some of these leaders? Does it take multiple conversations to bring their walls down? And so I have this very powerful suite of tools that I use with every leader. And it's really kind of pre-work. I have them, give their input. And I'll tell a quick example. So a couple months ago, I had a client reach out to me and they said, Claire, we want you to come in and do a 360-degree feedback on our executive leadership team, because there's some misalignment there and there's a little bit of bad behavior and we don't feel like everybody's, kind of getting along. And so, we feel like a 360 feedback will.
Claire, I lost you.
Oh, now you're back.
Okay.
Are you with me? Yeah, your video froze. I don't know if it's on my side or not, but
Okay,
I can
I see
restart
you
that
now.
answer.
Like you,
Okay.
oh my gosh, like you froze for the longest time and then you came back.
Okay. And from my side, my video looked fine this time and you froze. So I'm going to start that answer again. Okay.
Oh my God. You're challenging my editing skills
I
now. And
know,
my
I
editor's gonna
know.
be like, "What did you do this time?" I'm like, "I don't know. The weather's perfect. I don't know what's happening
It's
today."
crazy. Yeah, it's insane. Okay. All right. So clap, clap. I'm going to start that assessment thing. Here we go. Take 3. Okay. Um, so you were to your question about how, does it take multiple conversations with some of these folks? And the short answer is yes, but I do have a hack that I use to kind of break down those defenses, right? And so I have this powerful suite of assessment tools that I use in my work, and it's usually sort of the pre-work before we really roll up our sleeves and work with leaders. Um, and as an example, a couple of months ago, I had a client who reached out to me and said, Claire, could you come in and do a 360-degree feedback on our executive team? Because there's some misalignment there and there's some bad behavior and not everybody's meshing. And, it would be really helpful if you could share with them what the other people around them think of them. And I said, great idea, great intention, wrong tool. And let me tell you why. If you use 360-degree feedback with a team that you already sense is not meshing, a 360-degree feedback is like pulling the pin on a grenade and throwing it in the middle of the executive conference room.
Wow.
Open and humble and receptive to, some of that input, right? If you've got, a toxic culture, a culture or a team where they are not gelling, 360 is the last place you want to start.
Yeah.
So what I typically recommend, and what I recommended to this client, was let's do some assessments. And they're not even going to feel it, right? Because I'm going to send them a link to a questionnaire. And all the input that is going to then give me some insights into, who they authentically are, what drives them from the inside, how they, what they're naturally good at, all the things I mentioned earlier, is going to be based on input that they tell me, because they're going to complete the questionnaire. It's not about here's what your boss thinks you should be focused on. It's based on how you completed this 10 to 15-minute questionnaire. This is what makes you tick. This is the things that, these are the things that you do when you're in a zone. And here's why those things come so naturally to you. And when you do that, especially at a leadership level, but I've done this with individual contributors as well. When you start those initial conversations around what's in it for them, what makes them tick, what's important to them, what they value, and what they are brilliant at, all of a sudden, those walls come down and they go, you know what? It's so interesting that you say that because X, Y, Z. Now those defenses come down, because what do the big companies do? What does HR always promote? Development plans, right? And they say, we're going to take our leaders and our leaders for tomorrow and our high potentials, and we're going to build development plans. And that's great, except for the fact that the traditional development plan says, here are all the areas where you're strong, and that's wonderful. Keep that up. Here are the things you're weak in, and we're going to design a development plan that gives you activities that make you work on those weaknesses. So could you imagine if I said to you, Susan, here are the things that you are not stellar in. These are the things that do not come naturally to you. But no, don't fear. We're going to give you more opportunities to work in the things that you're not good at, that you don't like, and that, you want to avoid. Does that make any sense? No. And we wonder why development planning doesn't work. So when you use tools that highlight to people, where you're naturally strong, what you're naturally talented at, how you process the world, what's important to you, then you don't have to build a development plan, you build a strength plan. And a strength plan says, if you spend more of your time in these areas, focused on these things and working with these types of people who complement you, at the end of the day, you're not going to feel drained, you're going to feel fulfilled. Now, that does not mean that you completely ignore their weaknesses,
Right.
but I call them blind spots. And the reason for that is we can't possibly be good at everything, right?
Correct.
And the self-awareness piece is, now I know what I'm really good at. Now I'm going to seek out opportunities to spend more time in my zone, but I'm also going to be much more self-aware of the things that don't come naturally to me. And especially as a leader, what that means is I'm not going to spend more time in those areas. but I'm going to recognize that those are blind spots, and I'm going to fill those in with people or processes that are naturally good at that.
Yes,
Right.
I
So when you
love that.
start those conversations from there and you say, we're going to talk about you, and I'm going to share some insights based on what you told me through that questionnaire.
Mhm.
It's not about sitting down with a leader for the first time and saying, I have your 360-degree feedback. There's some good news and there's some bad news. And they go, I just want to know who said what about me, because I'm a leader, and I've seen it happen. I've seen people then go back and try to, avenge the criticism. And it's like, that's not what this is intended for. So 360-degree feedback has its place, but not as a starting point. Use these sort of, tools and these conversations that turn on that self-awareness light in leaders. And now they're going to be far more receptive to work with the people across the table from them, because we're also going to work on their self-awareness.
Yes,
So it's
I
really
love that
powerful.
piece. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that piece, Claire, especially like, digging into and finding their strength.
Yep.
Because I really love that. I know back in the day, they didn't do that. Those assessments that we had to do, like when I worked in the hospital, we had to give assessments to our coworkers and all that. Well, everybody knew who said it. Like there was
Right.
nothing, what are their strengths? It was always like, what don't you like about them? Or what are they
Yep.
not doing? It's all negative, negative, negative. I'm like, but I don't want to do this because
Yeah.
like it's just finding their negative. It's not finding what they're really good at and then working with that. So I like the fact that you talk about, your strengths, finding your strengths and then working with the blind spots and stuff. So I absolutely
Yeah.
love that.
It's just a far more energizing and motivating way to have these conversations and to work toward continuous improvement, right? Because now you get to work on putting your foot on the gas on the things that already come naturally to you, so that
Mhm.
you can be in that zone
Yes.
as much as possible and not in places that don't really serve you.
Right, absolutely. So, is there a quote or a saying that when you are having a bad day or an off day or a day when you're like, okay, I'm giving up, like I just can't do this anymore. Is there a quote or a saying that you just go to, that you've just always had?
Um, There are quotes that come to mind, but for me, it's more of a physical thing. So let me explain that. And I mean, even even as a business owner now, even when I get to be in my zone and I love what I do and I love my clients and all of that, and I feel very grateful and very blessed. There are still days, right, where I hit a wall, or I, have a project or a conversation that I don't feel went well, or didn't energize me, right? And here, we come back to that sort of that freedom and flexibility that I get to have, where I can sort of dictate my schedule and my priorities and what I'm going to focus on. When I get to those days, and they do happen, where I'm just not feeling it, or I'm not, I'm feeling a little bit less than confident about my own abilities, because we still have those voices of doubt in our heads, right?
Yes.
Some people call it imposter syndrome or fraud complex, or just, just those days where we're lower energy. For me, it's less about a saying, and it's about just reminding myself I have the right and the ability to stand up and walk away for a while. And even if you're in a corporate box, you still have that right. You still have that right to take a break. If there's a conversation you're in the middle of and it's not constructive, if it's a project you're working on and you just keep hitting a wall and you can't see the answer, the solution, the doorway out, give yourself a physical break. So, for me, that's kind of always been the, more of the secret to breaking that cycle of, you know, because in the past, before I like kind of, discovered that physical break, I would just sit there and just hammer away and say, I'm going to break through. I'm at this wall. I'm at this down point, but there's a lot more work I need to do today before I can call it a day. And I'm just going to keep hammering away and hammering away and hammering away. And eventually I'm going to break through. And I have found through experience, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, it's the worst thing you can do, because it's not going to make you more productive. It's just going to make you more tired.
Yes, I like that. I absolutely agree with that. Because there's a lot of gurus, experts, people out there that say, just keep going, you got
Yeah.
this, just go. And I can tell you from personal experience that I kept hammering away, and it landed me in bed with surgeries and just a lot
Yeah.
of illness, because I broke myself down, because I thought if I just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, and I didn't take that break, that I'd
Yeah.
be more successful. But what it did is it like took me so far back. So I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's a great piece of advice, not necessarily a quote, but it's a great
Yeah.
saying, and it's a great like motto, saying to live by. I like that. Thank you for sharing that.
No problem. I mean, and for those who need a little bit more of a mantra, one thing that's sort of a very quick, very easy mindset shift.
Hmm.
How many of us wake up in the morning and say, "What do I have to do today?"
Oh my
Right?
gosh, so many people.
Right. So here's the mantra, here's the mindset flip. Instead of saying that when you wake up in the morning, wake up and say, "What do I get to do today?"
Oh,
There
beautiful.
is it's such a quick flip. Even if some of what you have to do
Hmm.
is mundane, it's tedious, or it's difficult. When you change your mindset and say, I get to have this conversation, I get to have this opportunity to resolve a conflict, I get to have this time working on this mundane
Yes.
piece because it's a building block towards something bigger, more strategic, greater, more constructive. That for me is a very quick morning mantra that I have gotten into the habit of doing, even when I don't
Mm,
give myself as much time in the morning as I would like to do some mindfulness, to do some journaling, or just to sit in the quiet before I just report to my computer and
yes.
get after it, right? That quick mantra flip will make such an enormous difference for anybody at any level in any work situation.
Absolutely. When you said that, I got my goosebumps. I
Yeah.
have my goosebumps still, because it is, because I talk about perspective and how if we change our
Yeah.
perspective and flip our perspective, like things are so different. And you hit it on like I still have the goosebumps. Like you're absolutely correct. Like I get to do this. We are so
Yeah.
blessed that instead of saying, "Oh, I have to go do this," if we just, you're right. If we just say, "I get to do this," I mean, it
Yeah.
just changes the whole outlook and how you think about your day and how you think about what you actually get to do, because a lot of people don't have that freedom, and a lot of people don't get to do that stuff. So
Yeah.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you.
Oh, good. You're very welcome. I'm
Yeah,
glad.
and yeah, absolutely. And before we get off, I know I've kept you on forever. We've had a lot of snafus on here, which is quite fun.
Totally on me. Sorry about that. I don't know what was going on today.
No, no, no. I do want to talk about a really important thing, and that is, you've created the decision dashboard. It's how to run your business from a one sheet piece of paper. And I've never heard that before. And so I am extremely interested in that. And I want, if you will, please explain to everybody listening or watching, what is that and why you came up with that.
Love it, love it. So thank you for indulging that, because I very much welcome that conversation. So um, there are so many scary statistics about leaders, first time leaders or a veteran leader in a new role, about their failure rate. And the findings from the experts is that are that at least 50% of leaders fail within 18 months in a new leadership role.
Yes.
And at first you're like, well, that can't be true. But then the more you think about it and the more experiences that you've had and the leaders you've seen or worked with or worked under,
Mhm.
you know that this is true, right?
Right.
And the biggest thing when you talk to leaders about their early days, their first 90 days, their first 6 months, their first 18 months, whether they've become successful, they underperformed, or they outright failed. 75% of them say that it was a lack of preparedness. I did not feel fully prepared for the role. And so it's one of the reasons that I specialize in not just assessing leaders and, not only do they have the right stuff, but what is that stuff and how can we put them in a much better, lane to play to their strengths, but also to help them get prepared for that role so that they're not spending, first of all, that their probability of success goes up, right? And that they're not spending 6 months trying to figure out, the team that they've got, the client or the customers that are at stake, their direct manager, and sizing them up, and all the stakeholders around them that are pivotal to their success or failure.
Right.
And what blows my mind is most companies plan for a dip. And
Mhm.
what I mean by that is when they put a new leader into a role, especially a very high level role,
Mhm.
they plan for, they forecast, they budget for 6 months of subpar financial performance because, well, that's about how long it takes for a leader to kind of get their arms around the role. It doesn't have to be like that. Why plan for the dip? Why can't you plan for dominance? Right. And so that's what I help leaders do. And so the decision dashboard was born out of, I've got these hacks for assessments that I use, right? And I've got all these other resources and all the years that I've been doing this, including my time in corporate, including all my time in, talent management and everything. And I've got all these resources and toolkits and frameworks or whatever. And the one that leaders keep coming back to and keep saying, oh my gosh, that's such a mind-blowing exercise we went through in framework is this one page decision dashboard. And it doesn't take one page to get there, but like the outcome, the product
Mhm.
is that, leaders have this sort of, more often than not, they say it's like drinking from a fire hose. When I first get into a leadership role, I've got all these things coming at me and I'm trying to size up my team and I'm trying to understand this and I'm trying to get the metrics right. And and it's like drinking from a fire hose and they're overwhelmed. And like we said before, most leaders will not admit when they don't have all the answers. And they will not raise their hand, especially higher level leaders, and ask for help.
Correct.
And so what do? Well, that's why their probability of failure is so high. So this decision dashboard is something that I developed kind of years ago and have refined and evolved over the years. And it is the go-to that literally when I work with clients and we put together this dashboard, I'll call them up at random and say, do you have the dashboard in your pocket? And they're like, right here. They walk around with it
Wow.
because it takes all of that information, that huge funnel, and narrows it down to the things that they need to understand and take in to help inform their decision. Because we never have 100% of the data that we need to make a fully informed decision. And leaders can't wait, but leaders often do. And that's, going to chip away at productivity. It's going to chip away at engagement. It's going to chip away at profitability. And this is why companies plan for this 6-month dip. If you have this one-page dashboard that working together, we can build somewhere between 30 and 90 days. It doesn't take a really long time.
Right.
They can look at that, and whether it's a day-to-day decision or it's a more strategic long-term decision, they can pull out that sheet of paper and say, yep, okay, I know what is the right decision based on this page. And so I use it with my clients, and I started to think about it, and I'm like, why not share it with more people, right? And so it's not a one-page book, certainly. It's like, and it's not huge. It's a little over 20 pages, but it literally walks the reader through how to build your own dashboard. If you don't have the luxury of, or the opportunity or whatever, we don't have the opportunity to work together to build your dashboard. This is how you do it. This is why you should do it. And this is how you can then use it to just accelerate your ROI as a leader.
Yes.
So yeah, so that's my new baby. I'm very proud of it. I'm glad I finally got, the mechanisms behind building the dashboard out on paper in a way that people can consume and use and get value from.
Yes, absolutely, Claire. And as a special, you're giving all the listeners the Decision Dashboard ebook bundle, a coupon for $20 off exclusively for the listeners or those that are watching the Success You podcast or the show. And they just need to use coupon code SuccessU2021 and they can get that $20 off. So I do encourage everybody to do that because I was fascinated I was like, what? You can lead with one page? Like what?
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for doing that for all the listeners and watchers of the Success You podcast. I appreciate that. So
My absolute pleasure. My absolute pleasure. I'm sure we're going to put it in the show notes, the link
yes,
to that.
yes,
But if
yep,
they're just listening and driving and don't have pen and paper,
yes.
just remember the decisiondashboard.com. I've updated the URL, but the decisiondashboard.com, and they can go there. And it's an instant download. If you're more of a paperback person, it's available on Amazon. But quite frankly, the ebook is loaded with bonuses and it's a bundled offer. So definitely I encourage you to go there and grab your copy.
Yes, absolutely. And as we're finishing up, Claire, what are 3 tips that you could give our listeners, our watchers, or even those that are reading the transcripts and the show notes? What are 3 tips that you could leave everyone with?
Oh, such a broad question. You give me such license here. So, the first one truly is to, if you are not a self-aware person, and I find that people who are not self-aware tend to think they are self-aware. So let's just make the assumption that you are one of the 90% of people walking around who are truly not self-aware. That's tip number one, get self-aware. If you want my help, I've got this super tool that's going to blow your mind and get you to self-awareness within, about 20 minutes. You can reach out to me and I'm happy to have that conversation with you. But that is absolutely the first key toward you kind of tapping into your genius. Because again, it's going to uncover for you how to get into that zone by defining what that zone, that genius zone is for you. So that's kind of tip number one. Tip number two is once you get to that place where you are far more in tune with what drives you, how you tend to show up, how you see the world, and kind of what your natural genius zone is to embrace authenticity, right? Truly embrace who you naturally are. In my case, it was embrace the goofy, right? Leverage the sarcasm, whatever your natural style, your natural ability, your natural bent at seeing the world and what drives you internally, lean into that and stop telling yourself that doesn't fit neatly into somebody else's idea of who you need to be. You're the person you've got to live with the most, so you want to be as authentic as possible. And then I think the third is just to go back to that morning mantra, right? Like change your mindset. The biggest obstacles we all put in our way to success are self-imposed, and they're mental. They're not physical. So if you even just do that mindset flip in the morning and stop saying to yourself, oh, what's waiting for me today? What do I have to do today? Right?
Correct.
And say, what do I get to do today? What do I get to experience? What do I get to learn? Um, you know, we all run across failure, and it doesn't mean that that's going to happen to you today, but fail forward, find the lessons. And again, I don't mean to keep you overusing lean in, but there's this physical energy that you get by leaning into the experiences that you have, the lessons you can learn from that. And that's how you're going to grow. You grow far more from your stumbles than from your successes. So embrace that.
Absolutely. So, Claire, what's in store for Claire? What's in store for Claire in the next 30, 60, 90 days?
Oh, one of the things that I love about what I do is there's no typical day. So, some people say to me, like, what's a typical day for you? So thank you for not asking that. Because the answer is I don't really have one, right? Like every day I get up and I go, what do I get to do today?
And we talked about that before we went live. Like, I was like,
Totally.
this is not my typical day. Like, I don't have a typical day.
Right. And sometimes it's total chaos. And some, I run my business out of my home. So there's laundry running in the other room. And, like I make the meals and I do the meal planning. And so at some point I got to figure out when I'm going to run to the grocery store because that doesn't fit in neatly with my afternoon calls, but I'll figure it out. What's in store for me for the next 30, 60, 90? I am intentionally focused on working with smaller companies. I do a lot of work with big companies, but I find that the smaller companies, again, to this point I made earlier about the ripple effect of bad decisions, bad hires, bad direction being far greater in a small company. So I'm very intentional, especially lately, in forming and building upon relationships with smaller companies and the investors behind the scenes of those companies who are interested in really helping to fuel and fund the businesses and leaders of tomorrow. Because those are the people that when we collaborate together, I can go in and help identify, do they have the right leadership team in place? Do they have the right mindset and skills and capacity to drive that business forward? And if they don't, are they the wrong leader or they just don't have the self-awareness yet? And I can work with both. So that's really where I'm focused right now. Yeah. And I don't know if you can tell in my voice, but like, I'm super excited about that, right? Because the earlier you can get involved, it's sort of like, school teachers will tell you the younger classes, the younger grades they get to teach, the better, because they have this opportunity to sort of imprint on those kids right before they kind of develop bad habits, et cetera. And so for me, the companies that are earlier in their evolution or their next growth spurt,
Mhm.
the better, because there's such an opportunity. Not that they're a blank slate, but they're more moldable as clay. They're not quite baked in yet. So,
Yeah, no,
so yeah.
absolutely. So, so Claire, how do these small businesses or anyone, small, medium or large, how do they get in touch with you?
So, first of all, thank you for this conversation. I know we went a little bit longer. We had to deal with some
You're
gremlins in
fine.
the
I love it.
all of that. But I've loved this conversation, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and jam with you. For your audience and anybody listening to this and anybody watching this, if my message, our conversation, my goofiness, my style, some of the tools that I mentioned resonate with you,
Mhm.
let's talk about it. Go to discoverywithclaire.com. I'm sure we're going to drop a link in the show notes and get a 15-minute slot on my calendar. I'm not going to try to pitch you. It's not a 15-minute sales pitch. You're going to do most of the talking because I want to get to know you. I want to learn a little bit more about where you are, what you're all about, what you might be struggling with, and let's unlock some doors for you.
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing to mention is I think a lot of people are so leery because you get on these discovery calls and then, 30 minutes later you're being pitched or, oh, you know what? I can work with you. What's your budget? And then all of a sudden they get
Yeah,
this weird and it's not that. Like this is a discovery of how you can help. And if you can't, you're going to be open and honest and be like, okay, this just isn't going to work out for these reasons and or
yeah,
whatnot. So I appreciate that about that. So
yeah.
just to let all the listeners or watchers or readers know that Claire's the real deal, and Claire is there to really, really help you build and continue to be successful in life and in business. So I highly suggest going to her website. And yes, I will drop it in the links below this video on the podcast and in the show notes and on the blog. So you can get a hold of Claire and book that time with her and see how you guys can work together.
Great.
You bet. So Claire, thank you so much for coming on the Success You podcast and show. I really, really appreciate it. And even though we had our snafus today, I think that's what makes us, like we talked about authentic. And I think that's what makes us who we are. And we don't have to be perfect and we can have these snafus and we can laugh and we can have like weird glitchies going in and out and we get to see your beautiful background and we just get to have fun and we just get to sit here and talk about life and we get to talk about business and you drop so many golden nuggets during this time that I hope, like my biggest hope is that people take that and really either buy one of your books, buy your course, buy, get a free consultation with you, whatever, and so that they can become successful.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for the wonderful endorsement and flattering words. I feel like we're sitting in the same living room together, just having a virtual cup of coffee and
Yes.
just jamming. I've really enjoyed this. This has been great.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Claire. I appreciate it. So, to everybody listening, watching, reading, and also to Claire, I wish you nothing but happiness and success. I'll talk soon.